You know, it's near Halloween. Niime's basically a witch. Dark magic, witch, it's the same thing, basically. I should dress up for the occasion, shouldn't I? Yeah, see? Exactly. Now all I gotta do is check how much of a budget we have. Scooby-Doo was able to make a cartoon in the 60s with less of a budget than this.
Fire Emblem has a wide array of badass old people in its history, but I gotta admit, there is some serious gender disparity in there. If you want foxy grandpas, you can choose from the likes of Jagan, the OG old dude on a horse who set the standard for old people for decades to come. You could go with Hanuman, a sorcerer who's so cool, 3 houses said, I don't care what route the player is on, they will have access to the monocle. Or you could have Yugen, the tactician who's noteworthy for having his plans often make things entirely worse before they get any better. But if you wanted foxy grandmas, you really only have a single option. The Mountain Hermit Niime from Fire Emblem 6. And to be honest, if I only had one option for badass grandmas, well, Niime is a damn good option to pick, and I'm gonna explain why. For starters, she is a fantastic unit. A very solid pre-promote in a game stacked with very solid pre-promotes. Her class is Druid, which makes her objectively cooler than every other class in the game, and she has fantastic base magic to complement her amazing base weapon ranks of AA. She's actually the best late-game staff user, as all 3 of your other primary staff users are highly unlikely to reach Niime's base magic, even if you baby them up hard. Niime is already fairly popular among FE6 fans for her amazing ability to not give a flying fuck about the entire late game via warp skipping, so I wanted to make that note about her before we moved on. But while Niime is a very powerful sorcerer, what about her character? Well, she appears in the last third of the game during the Ilya-Sake route split, and unlike Juno and Diane, which route you go on doesn't matter, she'll join you either way. In Ilya, she's approached by Burn and is, asked to cast a magic spell that will cause a snowstorm to impede Roy's progress. Niime agrees, though in actuality she tricks Burn and casts a spell that freezes the rivers, which helps Roy's army, and by Roy's army I mean Percival, approach Burn much easier. Having this old lady's first action be one where she dicks over the bad guys immediately endears her to the player. It's a great introduction that helps portray her as both kind and clever. Niime is thrown in a dungeon for her transgressions, but she is quickly rescued by Roy, and afterwards she gives this big old exposition dump about some dark dragon stuff that's probably not important to anything later on. She then joins Roy's army, as she has a natural curiosity about the dragons, and figures staying with an anime protagonist is probably a good way to see them. Oh, and in Sake, she just kinda shows up for no real reason to give the same exposition dump, just without the cool scene of her fucking over Burn. So, points to Ilya for the cooler Niime introduction. And after that, she vanishes into the night like the cryptid that she is, never to be seen in the main story again. But such a thing is to be expected of an FE6 character, so it's off to supports for the rest of the video. She has 5 supports in-game: Yodel, Sophia, Ray, Hugh, and Fa. We'll start with Ray, since his is a fairly simple affair. It starts with Ray being the usual little shit that he is. Niime approaches him trying to help him further his studies into the dark arts, but he blows her off, thinking she's nothing more than some random old hag. But once he learns that Niime isn't just a old hag, but the old hag, he swallows his pride and practically begs her to teach him the ways of the dark arts. Niime manages to break through Ray's wall of being a dick to everyone and helps teach him the path to darkness, even getting him to give her a genuine thank you, which, from Ray, is pretty rare. The support is honestly more for Ray's character than hers, but it helps portray her as a good mentor, and as someone who's good with kids, as managing to get Ray to be earnest is not a very easy thing to do. In a similar vein to the Ray support, her support with Sophia is honestly more about Sophia than it is about Niime. Niime approaches Sophia wanting to learn more about the dragons in the dragon village in Nabata, and Sophia explains a bit about her home. there aren't that many dragons still around thanks to the global warming that the sacred weapons caused. I'm not even exaggerating, that's literally what happened. But there are dragon-blooded people in plentiful amounts. Yeah, apparently Nabata is a Scaly's paradise, as there are many half-human, half-dragon people like Sophia running about, and that dragon blood gives them cool powers. Future sight, in Sophia's case. Niime starts to pity Sophia, as Sophia's already been captured once due to her powers and has to hide away from the world, lest she get taken away again and used for them. But Sophia rejects Niime's pity. Sophia states that her dragon blood is a part of her. It makes her who she is, and living life as a normal girl, quote-unquote, is not. Niime respects Sophia's pride, and muses that Sophia is just like Niime when she was younger. Which makes me wonder what kind of life Niime lived that she could relate to Sophia, you know, a woman who's in danger all the time for simply existing. Okay, so now those two supports are out of the way. They were good supports that I truly recommend reading, but they didn't really have Niime as the center, more so as the observer. Her supports with Yoder have her play a more active role, as apparently the two old bats know each other. Niime greets Yoder with some snarky old lady lines, poking fun at how Father Time hasn't been very nice to Father Yoder, and Yoder responds with kindness, not even taking offense to Niime's words. They remarked that they haven't met for 50 years, and apparently they had some kind of falling out back then, as only now, decades later, do they remark that they understood each other's emotions of whatever the fuck it was that happened. So you might be asking yourself, well, what the fuck did happen? Well, as their supports go on, that question gets answered. Kind of. Not really. Yoder has some kind of fever dream in the middle of battle. He's having a vivid recollection of past events. A person, who is heavily implied to be Niime, is berating Yoder for remaining passive in the aftermath of his sister's murder, as she was killed at the hands of bandits, knights, monsters. It's never really explained. Yoder seeks the path of forgiveness. Given that he would grow into the Archbishop of the Church, it makes sense that he was always a man filled with kindness. Niime berates him for this ideology, saying that leaving killers alive will only cause them to kill again. And before you can hear Yoder's rebuttal to Niime's words, Yoder is snapped back to reality, ending the flashback. Now you might be wondering a lot of things, like who killed Yoder's sister? What happened to the people that killed his sister? Why was she killed in the first place? Why do so many people subscribe to the FEMS Paint Patreon? Well, to be blunt, I have no fucking idea. Well, about the support. I know exactly why people subscribe to the FEMS Paint Patreon. That's because it is a fantastic service that gives money to me, and anything that does that is worth supporting. For as little as $3 a month, you can pledge to the FEMS Paint Patreon and get benefits like early access to major videos on the channel, or for some more change, the ability to vote on polls for future analysis videos. The next poll is a Battle of Lords. Ephraim has the early lead, but it could change at any moment, as there have been many one-vote victories on the Patreon polls. My patrons include the likes of Andrew Crockett, Arctic Dusk, Atomic X160, Don Juan, follow Penta the North Star on Twitch, subscribe to Great Riek, Green Brigand, Hell on Heelys, My Anus is Bleeding, Keithan Coleman, Kieran Morin, Lightning Bolt, Me Do a Gamer, Memi, Mesomematomia, Michael Hamilton, oh fucking Christ, Nem 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 Nem. Fucking Christ, what is she gonna come up with next time? Nevrix the Fallen Shield Guy, Ranger Man Sam, Ryan Walter, Space 1255, Steph D, Tato, Anti-Ginger, Brentendo11, Drew Hack, Kazu Foxfire, Max, Sezegi, and that was the last one, Sezegi. Thank you guys very much for your support, and what were we talking about? Oh right, the meaning behind Yoder and Niime support. Well, you see, I have no fucking idea what they're talking about. Yoder's sister is never mentioned in any of his other supports. Niime's history, at least in regards to this, is never mentioned in any of her supports. This huge event that changed the course of Niime and Yoder's lives is just never explained and never addressed in any major way. Niime and Yoder said they once walked the same path, but they split somewhere long ago, likely over the argument over Yoder's sister. But what the fuck does walk the same path even mean? Was Niime once a cleric with Yoder? Or maybe Yoder was once a shaman with Niime? Was it maybe saying that they were romantically involved? Or that they were just close friends? Who fucking knows? This is a mystery with no answer. It's a fascinating bit of lore that makes Niime and Yoder very interesting to theorycraft about, so I kinda like it for that, but the lack of answers just drives me up a wall. Well, okay, that support left a whole lot of questions with no answers, so let's get to a support about something much easier to understand. Child murder! Niime's support with Fa has Niime taken aback by her, because the dark, all-powerful dragons that Niime researched creates a mental image that Fa doesn't really match it. Fa clings to Niime immediately, affectionately calling her Granny Niime, and Niime takes to the role of grandmother fairly quickly too, wasting no time in boring Fa to sleep with long-winded stories about stuff a kid doesn't care about. The support is mostly a cutesy one until the very end, where Niime shames herself for almost, quote, doing terrible things to an innocent little girl for peace and safety of her race. Now, there are a lot of interpretations for what that could mean, anything from horrifying experiments to outright murder, but the fact that Niime was willing to do something like that in the first place shares a darker edge to her character that isn't often seen in Fire Emblem. But the fact that she couldn't go through with it also shows that at her core, Niime is a kind woman, and that mixture of good and bad makes her very interesting to read. But I'll be damned if Niime's kindness rarely shows with her grandson Hugh. She has very little kind words to give him when their support starts, and Hugh is trying his hardest to outright avoid talking to her. It's revealed that Hugh was raised by her, as his father Canis and his mother, woman not important enough to get a name, died when he was young. He left home 3 years prior to FE6's events, encouraged by Niime to study the dark arts, though Hugh found anima magic to be more his style, so he became a mage instead of a shaman. Niime makes no effort to hide her disappointment in Hugh, leaving in a fit of disgust over her grandson abandoning his father and her footsteps in dark magic. These scenes are filled with funny lines from both Niime and Hugh, and they endear both of them to the player. Hugh's endearing because you feel sorry for him. Niime is really harsh, so he garners sympathy. And Niime's endearing because you feel sorry for her too. Hugh is pretty fucking stupid, so she garners sympathy for having to deal with him. As their support goes on, Hugh and Niime eventually have a heart-to-heart over Hugh's life choices. Hugh at first muses that the reason he can't handle dark magic is because he isn't really related to Niime, and Niime hits him in frustration, as he is indeed her kin. She was the one who brought him into the world, as this was the time period where instead of a doctor, women were assisted in giving birth by whoever happened to be within 5 yards of them at the time. Niime reveals that Hugh's mother was a powerful sage, and though she wanted Canis' wife to be a shaman like them, she couldn't turn her away when she was such a nice woman with such a distinct talent. Hugh is amazed that he could be related to Niime when he's so beautiful. Yeah, way to be humble there, Hugh. And Niime remarks that she was a stunning beauty when she was younger, as she would sucker dumb men, who act like Hugh, and seduce them out of all of their money, only to ditch them and move on to the next guy with loose pockets. It's a line that doesn't really have any importance, but it was funny enough that I really wanted to mention it. Upon hearing of his lineage, Hugh figures that Niime must be really disappointed in him. With his pursuit of anima magic, Hugh has let Niime's dark magic bloodline die out. But Niime rejects the idea, as when he tries to say she's disappointed in him, she says, "The strange thing is, I'm not. I can't say how much I miss yelling at you while you were gone. Maybe they really are cuter when they're more troublesome. I certainly want you to live a long and fulfilling life, Hugh." The two's relationship, in just 3 supports, is very endearing. At surface level, it's a bunch of funny lines courtesy of Hugh's lack of brain cells, but deeper in, it's a heartwarming pair of people whose life wasn't the kindest to them. Canis' death was a big deal for both of them, but when all they had was each other, they did still love one another, and though they rarely show it, it is heartwarming when they do. It's a bond that helps fully flesh Niime out. It shows her history, her family, and how she feels about her legacy. Speaking of her legacy, in Canis' existence in FE6 prequel, she gets mentioned in a funny scene I want to make mention of. In Canis and Pent's supports, Canis gives Pent a dark magic tome, as Pent is ever the scholar, and wants to read it even if he doesn't have the knack for using the dark arts. Pent remarks that such a tome should be left in Canis' family, but Canis says that his mother wrote it, and he can ask her to write it again, revealing to Pent that she's the mountain hermit Niime. Pent, upon hearing this, starts running away from Canis in an excited fit, saying that, quote, every mage knows Niime the mountain hermit, as he runs off to find his wife to gush over how he met Niime's son. This scene is hilarious to me. Pent doesn't fanboy like that over anyone, and he lived with fucking Athos. And it shows that Niime is a genuine legend in the lore of Eel, which I think is pretty rad. Canis also mentions Niime with Nino, revealing that she was pressuring Canis into making Hugh a dark mage, which is a nod to what would eventually transpire with him, which is a neat callback. Or call forward, I guess? At the end of the day, Niime is a very fascinating character. Equal parts dark and light, kind and cruel. She really feels multifaceted. She has supports where she helps other characters shine, and she has supports where she herself shines, leading to 5 very good support chains in a game filled with very good support chains. As someone whose favorite characters in media tend to be the older people, FE usually knocks it out of the park with its elderly, and Niime is no exception. I wish we had more badass grandmas to work with, but honestly, if Niime is the only one we got, I can't act like it's not a bad one to have. I would like to thank everyone still watching for making it to the end of another character analysis video. Thank you for watching. This was fun to make. I don't really have any fun thing to say about that. Thanks very much as always to the Green Brigand for his support in looking over the script and calling me out on any mistakes I make, as I promptly ignore him for bringing them up. Thanks as always for the help. If you enjoyed the video, please consider following the Discord. The link will be in the description, and we like to have fun there. And also don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, sacrifice your firstborn to me, you know, all that stuff. And enjoy this frog. Yeah, I'm playing Ocarina of Time again. It holds up really well. And I like this frog, and I want you to look at him. Until next time.
Change the world. My pride, oh man.